Hey there. Hi. Um, Welcome to the joint Environmental Protection Committee and Battery Park City Committee. Jeff Galway and myself, Alice Blank, are co-chairing this committee meeting. And we have four items on the agenda. The first two are the joint committee meeting topics. One is the Independent Environmental Monitor, and we're joined by Laura Dodge, the independent monitor in question, who has worked with this board for many years on a number of projects, specifically 250 Water Street or Lake Grove-based jail. We're really thankful she's here tonight. She's here to answer questions and talk about what's up on the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project. And then second, we'll talk about the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project with the particular streets and stormwater tie gates. And then Jeff will follow up single-handedly with the Battery Park Security Update and the programming, construction, and event updates. So, I think we don't have quorum yet. That's
We have a couple people who are online,
right.
who were approved online. There
Right.
should be at
What are
least,
our numbers now?
We have Wendy, we have Laura, we have Justine and Betty.
there are two others.
Can I ask a favor to get the, in the chat, just the attendance? Thank you.
Who's here in the room?
Hi, Wendy. Thanks for coming. Wendy Chapman is our co-chair of the Environmental Protection Committee.
Betty's online
Betty
tonight, definitely.
too.
Christine Dominic as well.
Is she?
She's, and,
Yeah, we have a few people there.
I know. Right. So
and.
we just, for those of us just joining, we're just reviewing how many folks are here because we do want to have quorum because there are resolutions to be reviewed and signed, sealed and delivered. Oh, Nesh, maybe you'll let us know when we have quorum for either committee. That would be great. And I should also say Tammy Meltzer, our board chair, is here.
Yes, I do need to.
And
I count towards quorum.
Yes.
right.
Was not expected.
Six.
Who asked for attendance?
Wendy.
If you put it in the general,
Oh, Christine is here.
I figured it out. No worries.
I think we're pretty close here. It could be Laura Scar. Welcome.
Just, oh, Jill. So we should have.
I should make an assumption, somewhere along the line, we have quorum for one of these two committees. I know we have it for, if we combine, but,
Okay.
I know Vera will be here shortly. She was Rhodes, so she's.
Okay, yes, we have four.
Excellent. Okay, off you go. Okay, Laura Dodge, from Extel, Environmental. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here online. If you'd like to begin what you are doing with the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project, and of course, we have Battery Park City representatives here. So it's great time for folks to, hey, Maureen Pacheco's been joining us, our commissioner, borough commissioner from DEP. In any case, Laura, welcome and
Yes,
take it
thank you.
away.
Yes.
Yes.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay, so we are just about being brought on board. We should have everything in order hopefully this week. And our role is, as Alice mentioned, as independent community monitor for air quality and noise. And we're also playing in sort of an environmental advisor role for the project so that in the event that community members and organizations and elected officials have questions, we're here in a capacity to assist. So our role will be reviewing the data as it's generated in real time. So I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with what's been set up for air and noise monitoring, but there will be two separate systems. There'll be 21 different noise monitoring stations that will then be downloaded through an app that will be accessible by, the authorized personnel, including our team. And the community air monitoring stations that will be set up in a downwind direction from, different work zones to monitor air quality for dust and also for volatile organic compounds. So there are action levels set up for both noise and also for dust and volatile organics. We'll be monitoring the real-time 24/7 monitoring data for both noise and air quality and comparing them. These are instantaneous readings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including weekends and through the night. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we'll be able to access that data. That data will be also averaged over, for air quality over a 15-minute time-weighted average and then compared to alert levels and action levels. And our role in part is to, monitor the data and determine whether or not there are any indications of either alert levels for air or noise or action levels. And then in the event that we do see any of that, to reach out to team members that could include the air monitoring company, Innovate, the design build contractor, BCPA. I mean, we're still working through what our communications will be. It's different on every project, so we're still, kind of getting integrated into the team. And we will then be issuing communications in the event that we see any exceedances of alert or action levels to see what was going on at the time, because we're not going to be on site except for twice a month where we're going to conduct random inspections of the active work zones using instantaneous real-time monitoring equipment for volatile organics, dust, and noise. And then we'll be issuing monthly reports that basically summarize, what our observations were and, what occurred during that monthly time frame, whether there were exceedances and then actions taken to mitigate any of the conditions, whether it be noise, dust, or volatile organics. There are various engineering controls that will be used during the project. There's different best management practices, essentially, that get instituted in the event, that we see, elevated noise over a sustained period or elevated, dust levels, et cetera. So we'll also be participating in meetings like this one at request, and also the working group meeting that's coordinated by Senator Kavanaugh's office, and available to discuss our findings for the month and then answer any questions. And we also have a budget for troubleshooting in the event anything comes up, concerns from the community. Some of our site inspections may be geared towards following up a situation that might have occurred in the community, a concern that might have been raised, or a complaint. So that's essentially our role, and we are being retained for a 4-year duration. At the end of the 4th year, it'll be evaluated to determine if we still need to be involved, because at that point, work will essentially be plantings and things of that nature, not necessarily, construction related activities that would be noise generation or, volatile organic dust generation. So that's where we are right now. And I apologize, I have a cold, so my voice sounds a little
Join the
raspy.
rest of the room here.
You sound fine.
Thanks, Nora.
Yeah.
So I guess it would be a good time to open it up for questions. So let's see if there's any hands within the room. Yeah.
My question has to do with noise monitoring.
Yes.
And in relation to the fact that Many of the residential buildings, in fact, all of the residential buildings near the project are multi-story, some of them quite high. And I know there are some sound mitigation barriers basically at street level
Right.
that are being used now and intended to be used going forward. How do you address sound at higher elevations in terms of monitoring? You must have faced something similar at the jailhouse, where there is a high-rise building right next door. How is that addressed?
No, it's a really good question. I mean, the noise stations right now are built on like a platform, but they are more on grade than they are elevated. There are provisions, I believe, for raising noise blankets in the event that there's, an activity that's going to, generating a significant amount of noise at any given time. I believe they can raise the noise blankets as high as 14 feet. And I mean, that's not going to, you know, reach higher levels, but I think the idea is to prevent it from propagating, and try to try to limit it and mitigate it at the source. So, these activities are going to be predominantly grade, based on the design for the flood walls. They're so the majority of noise generation is going to be at grade. So
In terms of the
before it propagates up, I think is the idea.
right. In terms of the monitoring stations themselves, are they going to be located on which side of the sound barrier? Because I guess my concern would be if they're, like next to a building, but there's a sound barrier at ground level, it's not going to be representative of somebody on the third floor, for example,
Right.
who's just as close, but not next to the sound barrier.
Right. From where I'm sitting right now, because we haven't yet been brought into the minutia of the details and we haven't been authorized to proceed with our review of those kinds of level of details. I know there are 21 stations. That's a good point as to where they would be located relative to the work zone. They should be in the down perimeter location relative to the work zone. So in between the work zone and the nearest sensitive receptor. So if there's a building between the work zone and the downwind direction, that's where the noise monitor should be.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions in the room? Yes, Mary Ann.
Mary Ann. I'll ask about the air quality monitors.
Mhm.
They're downwind the work, but what happens when the wind changes? Is somebody on top of, can they
Yes.
be relocated easily?
Yes, that's a great question. And yes and yes. So there's a meteorological station in each of the work zones that will be monitoring 24/7, again, just like with the air monitors themselves. And that will give them the prevailing wind direction, wind speed, temperature, and I believe humidity, so that they'll be able to monitor for shifts in wind. And yes, the idea with the community air monitoring plan stations, the camp stations, is that they would be in the downwind direction relative to the work zone, between the work zone and the nearest receptor. So the idea is that they are going to change daily, and it is something that needs to be kept up with, and that's the role of Enovate, which is the company that's in charge of the monitoring for both noise and dust and volatile organic air quality. So the camp and also the noise monitoring plan, which are two separate plans, but they're both being administered by Enovate. And, it is definitely a dynamic process and plan. And each work zone will have its own meteorological station.
Another question. I hear that the data will be monitored, but
Mhm.
if I'm riding a bike in the neighborhood and I enter into a zone of bad air,
Mhm.
I mean, is somebody monitoring that all day long and night long to do something about the bad air?
Well,
Or is it just data that gets looked at later?
no, it's actually 24/7, the monitoring will be occurring. So all day, all night, and all weekend. And the data is monitored. Now, Innovate is responsible for monitoring it, as well as our role is to also be looking at the data because we'll have access to the telemetry system, the cloud-based database that's managed through data management software. So the software gives you the real-time readings, but it also gives you the 15-minute time-weighted averages. And the action levels for dust and for volatile organics are based on a 15-minute time-weighted average, because that's how the air quality standards are calculated. We'll be able to see the instantaneous readings, but we'll be looking at 15-minute time-weighted averages and comparing them to the alert level, which is a level at which you say, okay, we need to start using some best management practices to try to minimize dust generation, minimize if there is a volatile organic issue, or minimize noise. And then the action level, which is the level at which work should be halted, and then something even more aggressive done to try to minimize the source of whatever might be monitored. So I mean, there are going to be times, obviously during the day where, these data are being generated and they're being looked at, by different sets of eyes. And then we're rolling it up and there's weekly reports that go from Innovate to the design engineer, to the engineering overseers. And then they then roll that up into a monthly report, and we'll be generating monthly reports, but we'll be reporting on issues of concern, in real time when we see them.
Thank you. Justine?
I have a little more.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. Hi, Laura.
That's fine.
I have a couple of questions. One,
Sure.
just like off the top, what is Volta Organic? What is that? That's noise or air?
Volatile. So volatile organic, or VOC, is a total reading based on different types of organic compounds. Probably the most common that you would think of would be something related to petroleum hydrocarbons. Let's say some type of fuel oil or something along those lines. So you'll see those compounds that are measured with the instrument that they use in the camp station picks up a total volatile organic number. Assuming that there are even volatile organics generated, which is, I think it's
May
more
not
likely
be.
to see dust than it is to see volatile
Yeah.
organics.
No, that makes sense. I just wasn't
yeah.
familiar with that word. But
Yeah,
okay, so then
VOCs.
Mike, the data will be monitored for air quality or whatever, and noise 24/7, correct?
Yeah.
Who is
Yeah.
doing that? Did you say Innovate is there? Someone's
Innovate
24/7
is,
looking at it?
well, Innovate, the data are generated 24/7, and then they're
Yeah.
monitored, by the Innovate technician during the workday, and then at overnight, the data are going to be reviewed the next morning. I don't think that there's anybody sitting there 24 hours a day looking at the data, but there are alerts that go to Innovate technician if there's an exceedance of an alert or an action level. So they'll get an alarm condition on their phones, actually.
So
These
even if
systems,
someone's not in the minute paying attention, there will be some
right.
alert that says, "Oh, this exceeded." Okay, so that's
Yes.
fair
Yes.
enough.
Yeah, the software
What
gives you alerts and action levels right to your phones. Yeah.
Perfect.
Mhm.
And then I know you said you haven't decided yet, or you're working on who gets, let's say that there is some alert that's generated, and I'm
Mhm.
focusing more on the dust right now.
Right.
Jeff, I'm gonna leave it to you to fight the noise, you and Jill for the noise, at the moment, but I'm gonna focus on dust.
Sure.
So let's say something with an alert happens,
Mhm.
and BPCA, the air monitor company, whoever it is who's supposed to be notified is notified.
Right.
What happens next? What are the steps that are supposed to happen, and who knows about it?
Right.
Allegedly.
If there's an alert level, then the work can continue, but the work that's in progress needs to be evaluated to see if something needs to be shifted, or if an engineering control needs to be used. Let's say in the example of dust, let's say they were doing work where they were clearing and grading for putting in one of the flood walls, and there was dust being generated and they were stockpiling soil. So one of the things that they'd be doing is covering the stockpiles, possibly applying water, to keep dust under control, those kinds of things. If you hit an action level that was exceeded over that 15-minute time weighted period, then the work would stop and they would do even more to minimize the dust generation. So it's sort of an alert. You can continue to work, but you've got to put some measures in place. Action level exceedance, you've got to stop and then reevaluate the work. And in the case of noise, it's a similar thing. So if the noise level is exceeded, then you need to stop work and evaluate the technique that you're using and try to determine if you need to use additional noise blankets or if you need to change the way in which the work is being done.
Who tells the workers? Because they're not getting the alert, right?
Right.
Innovate, they have to come down to the site or someone's, like what's the lag time? How much
Well,
pollution are people in the neighborhood riding their bike by or in their apartments? How much are they breathing in the bad air
Well,
before
the
something is done?
Innovate will have technicians on site in real time, during the day. They'll be there,
Workday.
the full work day. And so they'll be setting up, every day, placing the camp units in the, determining the prevailing wind direction, placing the camp units, monitoring everything. They'll be maintaining the equipment. They'll be making sure everything is operational because in a system like this, invariably, sometimes one of the units can go down, right? So they'll know that because they'll get an alarm and then they'll go and they'll act and they'll correct the situation. Same thing with an alert or an action level. As soon as they get the alert or action level, they'll then go over to the location and evaluate what's going on. And then they'll coordinate with the, general contractor, the design builder, and the engineers who are overseeing the work. So there's multiple levels of oversight here because you've got multiple levels of entities that are involved in the performance of the work. So it's not just us. We're kind of added on top of already a number of different levels of action that's taking place in real time, in addition to the generation of the real time data and the calculation of these 15-minute time weighted averages.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. Well, can I just,
Thank you.
I just have two more
Let me
questions,
just go-
Alice?
Well, yeah, then one more and then we're gonna go around, then you can have a second round and then that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
No, it's all about the noise, but it's, so the question is, with the people, the residents in the building, the workers, whatever,
Mhm.
as time passes, you're going to be getting some sort of a idea of what kind of work is being done. And I know with the South Resiliency Project, the BPCA was able to send out weekly things to say, okay, we're doing this work and it's going to be noisy or whatever they could say. Is there a way to advise about we're doing this work and you might want to close your windows and that might, whether that's communicated or not might be up to the BPCA and that's going to be me pushing them. But does that even make sense as a thing to say in advance?
No, I think it does. I mean, I think to do anything the whole idea behind these kinds of monitoring programs is to be proactive, not reactive, to the extent that you possibly can. And that's why the continuous monitoring is so important because you start to see patterns, right? So when the work starts, you'll start to see patterns. This type of activity tends to generate noise. So we know based upon the noise monitoring plan, all the different pieces of equipment that'll be used in the project at different times and different locations, some of them have higher noise generation potential than others. So they kind of know that when they're doing certain types of work, there's a higher potential for noise. So I think to be proactive is the idea here. That's why all these plans have been put together with so much thought. And there's a tremendous amount of detail involved in all of the plans. And so I think that there definitely needs to be mindfulness of letting the community know if it's possible to close your windows, given the circumstances with each individual location, the time of year, etc. And these are things that are, I mean, it's a very good question. These are things that are going to functionally start to develop, and there'll be best management practices that will come out of the specific, each REIT has its own unique characteristics, right? So each work zone will have its own unique characteristics. And it tends to be, it should be, and I think it is a proactive approach, and not as much of a reactive approach.
It's wonderful. And the statement to the Battery Park City Authority is please let the homeowners coalition, as well as I'm assuming the Gateway Plaza Tenants Association, know specifically as this information comes out, so we could try to disseminate the information beforehand. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Justine. I see Nick nodding his head
Yes.
here in the room. Okay, Jill, thanks. Welcome.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
I couldn't agree with you more about being proactive. As you know, even on this call, there are many 9/11 survivors in this community who are particularly sensitive to this. Does it make sense? Is it possible to put air monitors on the buildings? Because while you're being downwind, we know from experience there's updrafts as well.
Right.
And I am concerned about that.
Yeah, I think right now, from what I understand of the plans, and again, since we're just being fully brought into the fold, I still have to do a deeper dive and sort of have a discussion with the team. My understanding right now are the camps are at grade or at breathing level typically, right? So like 4 or 5 feet above grade, not on the ground, but at the normal breathing level for an individual, and not necessarily up high. And there's some rationale behind that, because one of the challenges with air monitoring for dust, especially for the smaller size particulates, is that it can come from background outside of the work zone, outside of Lower Manhattan. It could come from a lot of different sources. So establishing background is really important, and that's supposed to be done 14 days before the work starts. There needs to be an establishment of what the natural background is, and then those meteorological stations give you the prevailing wind direction, and you need to be taking all that into account as you're monitoring the data. But to your point, the smaller particle size, PM 2.5, can be entrained, and they can migrate a very large distance. The PM 10, the larger particles, that are 10 microns or less, really tend to be less migratory, but are still monitored for. So both particle sizes are being monitored for on this project,
Okay, let me,
which doesn't always happen. So I'm sorry, Jill, I'm not,
Jill,
not
we're
I
not
think she's
hearing
on mute.
you, Jill.
oh, sorry. Anyway, as we've learned from 9/11, the small particles are particularly,
Yes.
dangerous. So in response to the fact that these can float upward, I assume should there be, but can there be monitors put on the buildings?
That's something that I can discuss with them. Right now, where I'm sitting, I don't think that is called for in the community air monitoring plan. I believe these monitors are all, in the downwind direction,
No,
downwind of the work
I understand that.
zone,
Yeah.
not
The
up on the building.
The
Right.
question is, would this be a benefit? And always keeping in mind that so many people here are 9/11 survivors and have been damaged by small particles already.
Right.
Would this make sense is the question.
I think it's something that, again, because you've got to be sure that what you're monitoring is actually coming from the work zone, and it's not the activities that are in progress, and not just
Assuming, right,
normal background. Right.
assuming,
So,
because you're going to check the background, so you will know that already.
right, but the thing, I guess the challenge is your background has to mirror your actual community or monitoring unit, because otherwise you're not comparing apples to apples. So your background has to be at the same level as your downwind monitor, because you're looking at what's coming into the work zone based on background, and then what's being added based on the work, right?
Well,
And
yeah, let me make it very plain, because
Right.
I know you're talking a lot. We have an issue here. We know small particles rise up. This is a
Right.
big concern of ours.
Mhm.
Does this help us? Let's take out background and everything else right now. Should small particles be a result of this construction? Should we have some kind of monitor on the building to protect people who need protection? Kind of just a yes or no.
I think because of the nature of the work here, you're unlikely to have a lot of 2.5 because 2.5 microns particle size are really more related to things like vehicle emissions and, um, you know, fire. Obviously the Canadian wildfires, that created a large issue with PM 2.5,
So the
across.
things that are being dug up when they're digging up under the water and they're digging up through
Yeah,
the dirt
there's,
and
right,
this and all the old 9/11 soil and what have
right,
you, and
right.
they're jackhammering and they're
Hmm.
putting piles in, that should
Right.
not have
Well,
those particles.
it the preponderance of particle sizes are probably going to be the coarser size based on the nature of the work here. So there's not going to be tons of like concrete crushing, and there's not going to be tons of that kind of activity. Most of it's just disruption of existing infrastructure, and then soil excavation and things like that, and then
There won't be,
hamlins.
okay, just there won't be concrete when they pull up all of the esplanade and all of
Well,
the
because it'll be wet, because a lot of that will already be wet, you don't have dust generation typically inherently. You've got, anytime you keep something wet, it minimizes the dust generation.
okay,
So where you have to be worried about is if it's super fine, super dry.
yeah,
So a lot of concrete crushing and having piles and piles of concrete, sitting there that could be easily blown away with
yeah.
wind, right? So, and there are things you can still do: cover the stockpiles, use
No,
water,
I
use
understand
things.
that, but I
Yeah,
just want to know what protections
right,
are in place
right.
for that. Will the people from your team be looking for that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I do think that because of the nature of the work here, it doesn't have a higher propensity for the 2.5 micron size particulate generation as much as the coarser, but it'll still be monitored for. And if there is indication that that smaller fraction size is a problem, then we'll bring those concerns up and we'll
Okay,
bring it to everybody's attention.
Thank,
it's just a
thanks a
shorter
lot.
follow-up question. Yeah. I'm
Yep. Mhm.
gonna ask a noise question, but I can come back around if you do another round.
Yeah, sure.
Let's just, yeah. Christine Dimick, welcome, Christine.
Hi. Hi. Quick question.
Yeah.
So this data, the AQI and the VOCs, will
Mhm.
this and also the noise, will this be accessible to the public?
My understanding is it's only to authorized viewers because, it is data that's being generated in real time. And so it's not something that, the average person would want to be like sorting through, but the reporting will be done, like the way we do our reports is we'll take screenshots of the actual data graphs. And I think that's the way the report will be done by Enovate as well. Well, you'll actually see the graph over the period of monitoring, and it'll be in comparison to the alert and action levels. So you can actually see what has occurred over the course of time. And because our scope also includes acting when exceedances occur, and the same with Enovate, they'll get alert levels, they'll take action. The report will also talk about what happened during the reporting period, what was identified, if there was an alert or action level, what caused it, what was done to mitigate it. So all of those things will be reported. But I
I see. But
believe
will
that
the public
it's
have
something that will
access
be
to that?
available to the, I'm sorry. I don't believe that it's going to be something where that database is going to be accessible to the public. It's typically not done that way just because it is, it's a cloud-based, very large amount of data that, it is not something that the average person would want to be weeding through.
I understand, but I think a lot of the people here might want to be weaving through it to be able to give assurance, not that you would not report it or not let the public know, but since there isn't any real-time monitoring where the public can actually see the air that they're breathing, given the history and the concerns, I'm just wondering if they might be able to access it at a later date so they could have that assurance that it is indeed staying below. I shared that having lived down here in South Battery Park during Wagner, and just recently, I mean, the AQI was quite high, and I have my own monitoring device.
Mhm.
And they weren't wetting it down. So, people don't always, do what they're supposed to do. So just to give the public assurance and the residents assurance, I'm wondering if you might be able to share that.
I can discuss it with them, but I'm not aware right now that there is a provision to allow the public to access the data directly. And again, it typically isn't done that way just because one of the things that tends to happen is that the instantaneous readings are not reflective of what the health standards are based on. They're based on the 15-minute time weighted averages. So there tends to be sort of a perception that we've got all these exceedances when in fact they're not. They're instantaneous, levels, but over a 15-minute time weighted calculation, they fall down below the alert or action levels. And that's what the health-based standards are based on. And that's how functionally you have to manage the data. And the one of the the role that we play is to ensure that these things aren't missed and that they are acted on. And if they aren't being acted on, to reach out and say, what's going on? Like, what caused this? What do you think is going on? Did you stop work? What are your best management practices you're putting in place? And to make sure that the stockpiles are covered, water is being applied, misting is done. If necessary, any other thing, windscreens, if it's a large area. So the thing that works against you is very fine grained dry. All right. So if it's wet and it's coarser grained, it has a less potential for there to be a PM 2.5 issue. PM 10, is also being monitored for, and that's very standard. That's the standard construction safety, set the permissible exposure limit essentially. And that's for worker safety and also for community safety. I think what you're referring to, the AQI, is the air quality index, right? And that's typically based on PM 2.5. And that's from the National Air Quality Standards, the ambient air quality standards. So that's more of a community regional monitoring tool to see sort of how the air quality looks. And so really important to be sure that the background is being monitored, because there are going to be background 2.5 in the city. And it could be for any number of things and not just this work. So the question is, what is the work adding to that, if anything? And that's where the best management practices come in.
I fully understand, but I also understand that exposure to these over time, repeatedly over time, and there's going to be a lot of people with their windows facing this project.
Right.
And we do have our windows open during the summertime and nice weather time. Air circulation is actually quite important to have in one's home. And then the dust, as you know, comes in, right? And it settles in the apartment. And I'm sure you know that the dust is probably the most harmful part in the apartment when it comes to air quality. So I'm just I'm deeply concerned for my friends who live right next to it, and I'm just wondering if there's something that can be done so they know, because as you and I both know, that contractors are contractors. So yes, ideally we this is the system put in place, but I just want to make sure it's followed, and that there is full transparency. That there's transparency in this.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's why we were brought on, I think, to add to the team that already exists, which is, a very highly layered and very qualified team. I mean, Innovate, is an exceptionally qualified, company that their personnel assigned to this project are extremely experienced. And, I've reviewed all the plans and, all of their, history and qualifications of the key personnel are all included in there, and they've done a great job with the plans from my review of them. But again, once we're on board fully, we'll take a deeper dive into the little details to see if there's something that we can, do to address some of these concerns. But our role is to ensure that on top of that multi-layered team, that we're looking at this from, as an independent set of eyes, not related to, the contractor, not related to the design build team, completely independent of them. And, we're retained by the Battery Park City Authority, but we remain, and I think Alice can attest to this, we remain, not a hired gun. We're going to call it like we see it, and that's our role, and that's how we implement the work scope. It doesn't matter who is paying us. What matters is that we're independent and we're looking at things, good, bad, and otherwise. So if we see
Great.
something that we think change, we're going to tell them, and we're not going to hesitate.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Christine, just so
Mhm.
you know, that is accurate, that prior to your coming on board, Laura had worked really hard with us on 250 Water Street, and I think anybody here, most people here that were here then would attest to the fact that she had done a terrific job in making sure that what needed to get done got done, and was transparent and was very much independent from the group that had hired her. So great.
Thank
I
you.
think there's one more question. Yeah, thank you. One more question, Tammy Meltzer.
Hey Laura, nice to see you again. I have
Hi,
a
Tim.
quick question. You're talking
Yes.
about wind direction. That is probably one of
Yes.
the most amazing and most petrifying things in Battery Park City. And I say it because
Right.
the wind whips off the
Right.
water pretty aggressively. And it's
Mhm.
not necessarily always east-west. So
Right.
what's the determination? I mean, it depends. I think if you live in Gateway Plaza, you would say that the wind is always east-west. It comes directly off the river. But in other places, it's different. So can you talk about the placement of the monitors to understand what's upwind and what's downwind and how that's calculated?
Right, and that's a great question, and it is definitely, this is what I was saying before, it's a dynamic system, and just definitely, I mean, almost everywhere we've worked in the city, it's dynamic, and here especially. So each of the work zones have a meteorological station. So those are all hardwired into the telemetry system as well, so that you can see the prevailing wind direction. And, if it's going to be flipping all over the place, that's going to create some challenges because you can't be moving the camp system, every 5 minutes. So they have to look at the dominant wind direction. And that's really for each day of work, that's going to be the challenge that's why each work zone has its own meteorological station, because you've got to calculate the dominant wind direction, and do your best to make sure that you're capturing it. And if it
And
shifts, then the upwind levels are establishing background, and the downwind of the work zone between the work zone and the nearest receptor, meaning residents, that the delta between what's coming on to the work zone and what's going off is what you're looking at with respect to comparing it to alert or action levels. So it's a dynamic system, and definitely given the setting here, that's going to be, a focus of the Innovate technicians to ensure that they're setting that up properly each day. And if it does shift in a dominant way, then they're going to have to adjust.
you've
to
had that
make sure.
conversation with them robustly, correct?
I have not had that conversation with them yet because we're still just being brought into the team. I mean, I have had, discussions with BPCA. I've had discussions with AECOM, the overall design, not design engineers, but the lead engineers for the project from AECOM. And I have not yet, gotten introduced to, the Innovate team or the design build contractor. That will happen once we get fully authorized, which hopefully should be this week. So we'll dive in, and understand and get to know them and find out exactly what, how they're going to implement this.
Perfect,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Kira.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I came in late, so I'm not sure if you covered this. How are these monitors being powered? Is this by solar, backup,
Yeah, the
electrical?
noise the noise stations, I believe, are solar powered, so the solar regenerates a battery, right? So that is the process for, and I believe the camp stations are the same, but I'm not 100% sure because I haven't seen the detail on the community air monitoring, but that's typically how it's done, is that there's a solar panel that, recharges the batteries. And invariably in these kinds of systems, occasionally the batteries, are depleted and they need to be changed out. And when that happens, there'll be no data being generated and the technician will get an immediate alarm. So they know to immediately go and replace the batteries. And that is just the nature of the beast, unfortunately, with this type of monitoring program. We've done them all over the city, all over urban areas, and no matter how hard you try, occasionally those things can happen. So that's part of their maintenance system on a daily basis.
Okay, because I hope, Laura, we're doing on the jail site, where NYU Langone is helping us pull data, FOIL data from the monitors that were there during demolition, even prior to you, and you were there, and they have noted gaps in monitoring, and that was due to the fact that they were not, the sun or the solar power energy isn't able to energize those monitors, and apparently battery wasn't either. So if there is a lack, of monitoring during crucial moments, that could be significant.
Right. And that's part of the maintenance and operation of the monitoring system on a daily basis. And unfortunately, the solar powered operated battery system is really kind of the best we have in the industry, because that way at least you have a better chance of not having these downtime periods. And it's an expensive setup for these as well, versus just straight battery operated and not having the solar power recharge the batteries. But this is part of the operation and maintenance of the system, and it's up to the Enovate technicians. And once they they'll get an immediate alarm if something is down, and then they can go go change out the batteries and make sure that they get the system back up again. Yeah, I mean, the goal is to have, as few of those downtime periods as possible. But they are going to happen. It's nature of the beast, because no matter how hard you try, there's going to be occasions when, it just goes down. And it may not even be the battery. It could be something else. It's all equipment. It's all highly technological equipment. So they're gonna maintain them. They're gonna calibrate them. They're gonna take care of the equipment. They're gonna replace faulty equipment. That's all part of the process.
Thank you. I see, I'm just gonna go one more round of questions very quickly. If your question has not been answered fully, then feel free to ask something new.
The public can also ask questions by raising their hand online.
Right, thank you. We're gonna close this out in 10 minutes, 7, so go ahead and ask it with that in mind. Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, hi. Are you going to be monitoring vibrations at all?
There is vibration monitoring as part of the monitoring program that Enovate is also responsible for. I'm not sure we're going to see the vibration data. Our role is for air quality and noise. We're not involved in the vibration monitoring because we're not engineers. We're scientists. So we're going to be, and I believe the vibration monitoring is focusing on buildings and on the path tunnels.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Let me ask you a noise question then.
Sure.
I saw the blankets, the sound blankets,
Yes.
already put up, not, in parts of the area. Then I went on the website for the company, and it does not look like they're put up correctly. They're supposed to be overlapping. They're supposed to be fully, each hole's supposed to be attached, and that's not happening. So my question is this, the other thing is that these were the number 9 version, and there are actually much stronger sound blankets. They're called blankets. They just look like the pads you do gymnastics on. And there also what it said on their site is those can be doubled for more sound protection.
Mhm,
When working near the residences,
mhm.
is I strongly believe they should be using the thickest available ones, and they should be doubled, and they should be installed correctly. Is this
Definitely.
something that you can be in charge of?
Well, we will definitely be monitoring it, and definitely if we see any issues with inappropriate or improper installation or insufficient installation, that will come up in the data. Because if there's a noise issue, then first thing they're going to do is add more, right? Whether it be more noise blankets or more whatever, or alter the tools that they're using or the equipment that they're using. So these are all things that are going to happen. But yes, we definitely will be looking at this. And when we go out to do our first inspections, we are randomly inspecting twice a month, and we'll definitely be looking at things like that.
Yeah, that would be greatly appreciated because they are not hung correctly right now.
Okay. I'm,
Thanks,
I'm,
Jill.
I'm taking copious notes.
Thanks, Laura. Anybody else online? Is there anybody I see? No. And in the room, no. Oh, Mary Ann, last one.
What are the hours of this construction? And how many days a week?
It's 5 days a week. Yeah, I'm sorry. Someone else can answer that. Yeah, go ahead.
It's 5 days, it's Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m.
7 to 6?
Thanks.
The third department.
And the reports that you said would be produced, who do they go to? Like, is it going to the authorities so they're aware of what's happening, or any other entity to be aware?
That's Laura question.
Well, the community air monitoring reports are gonna be posted on our website. We'll have them available to the public on our website. We have them for this project too.
Okay,
In terms of if they have to be distributed, I'm not 100%, but I can double check for you. We have to distribute to anybody else, but we do we have to commit to putting them on our website, which we're gonna be doing.
and who in the authority is sort of hands-on with the whole construction project?
We have many people who are hands-on, but our senior vice president of design and construction, Heather Furman, is the person who is like leading the charge on this, and there are other people on our team. Dan and I are also involved. We're sort of more on the design side of it, but Heather's involved. There's several other people on design and construction too, but Heather is the twin person.
Okay.
Okay, it looks like we have had all the questions answered. They were fantastic questions, really edifying, and Laura, great answers. I hope some people feel more assured after this beginning session. Just wonderful to see you again and have you involved. So a big thank you to Laura Dodge. We will be seeing more of her, I suspect, sooner than later.
All right.
And
Forward to-
we can segue to the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency title, Street Ends. Thank you. Street Ends. So thanks, Laura.
Yes,
And
I'm
we
gonna
will-
sign off. Thanks, everyone. Nice to meet those that
Bye.
tonight, and great to see everybody else. All right, take care.
So agenda item 2, I think that we are, I don't know, is that Claudia or, yes?
Yeah.
Hi, Claudia, welcome.
Everybody.
Claudia Filipina from.
And Dan also, Dan Dixon.
Dan Dixon, sorry.
You can text in this bit. So we got, and we also are joined by Marty, obviously, I think you all know Marty.
Yes, I did introduce, but I will say it again, that is really a great honor to have Marty.
Yeah.
Our deputy, our borough commissioner from the Department of Environmental Protection. That is really lovely that you're here, and it's a good time also to ask Marty questions that pertain to this particular project. I have a lot of.
You're all night, Alice.
Well, it's
Picture questions.
Table set.
Yeah, yeah.
To your point, Alice. So we wanted to focus specifically on the street ends along the South Esplanade, but I know that we did talk about the broader drainage on the project, which I think we'll probably come back to with a more fulsome presentation around that in the new year.
Yes, that was
That-
the understanding. Yeah, that is an important point. That is, you have promised that, and we are delighted to keep you to that promise.
And folks, I had spoken with like Claudia, just wanted to make sure we were clear on, a few of our assets that have been here for a long time, that may or may not be related to the project, just so that there was some clarity, but I'll let Claudia and her team do too.
Excellent.
So we got a bunch of questions, sort of around the street ends. So we have an agenda here, as always. You can always ask us questions. That's why we're here. We want to talk about existing, one of the questions we got was about existing emergency access and then any proposed future new emergency access. We wanted to talk about the DEP infrastructure that is located at these street ends. We wanted to talk a bit more about what the existing design is and look at some of the constraints that exist. I know that we apologize, we owed you some constraint diagrams. We just wanted to make sure we put together clear ones. They're part of this presentation. Apologies, you did not get them at the end of last week. And then we want to talk about next steps because we want to continue to have a dialogue with the community about other ways that we can improve upon these street ends and start just a broader dialogue about this that will run parallel to us sort of moving this project forward. That was my short elevator pitch. So I will just talk about the street ends in question. We're talking about Albany Street, Rector Place, and West 10th Street. Next slide is fine. So this is the existing emergency access. So the red is for basically fire apparatus, fire. The green represents emergency, vehicle access, meaning ambulances largely. And then obviously existing street networks are in blue. So as you can see, the emergency access really runs along the Esplanade to the street ends. They can sort of enter at South End Avenue. They can enter the Liberty Street ramp and access the areas along the Esplanade there. Fire access and apparatus is largely through Gateway and also the Liberty Street ramp. The next slide, you can see it's being modified slightly just to address the fact that we're changing the paths along the South Esplanade. So essentially the access remains the same. It's just a little bit reconfigured to match the alignment of the streets there. We're not increasing any apparatus locations. It's South End Avenue, that's existing. And the other ones remain at Gateway, obviously, and at the Liberty Street ramp. So the apparatus routes are not changing. There's a slight sort of route modification for the emergency response vehicles. This has all been coordinated with the fire department as well. So I just wanted to close with that because I think that on our end, we may have misspoken sort of about there's increased fire apparatus, which is actually not the case. Next slide, please. So DEP infrastructure, so to these locations, specifically at Albany Street and at Rector Place, we have to install new tide gates. That's part of the site readiness work that we've been probably talking a lot about over the past few months. You may be sick of hearing us talk about it. At Albany Street, we have to install a tide gate on an existing stormwater pipe. That work is expected to begin this spring. This is an 18-inch tide gate structure on the existing stormwater pipe. On Rector Place, we have to put a 96-inch tide gate on a CSO, combined sewer overflow at Rector Place. That's going to be beginning in March. If we can go to the next slide here. So basically, at Albany Street, the tide gate location, this is a question we've gotten, is dependent on the location of the existing pipe, which you can see on the diagram on the right. I also have, I believe, Russ Dudley, who's with Arcadis, who did a bunch of this drainage work for our team, who can answer sort of more detailed questions about this, because I'm certainly not a drainage engineer. Sometimes I play one, but I'm not one in real life. The tide gate is for the flood protection system is required to be on the dry side of the alignment. Should it need to be accessed during the storm or service. Moving it further east down Albany Street would mean we'd have to do interventions on, you can see there's a storm sewer there, there's a catch basin, there's another storm connection, there's some drainage to the patios. We'd have to do treatments on all of those were we to move this further east. So by keeping it this location, basically at where just past where the cul-de-sac is at Albany Street, where it's roughly where that is. You can see, or just slightly past that, we're able to not have to do anything on all of those lines behind it. We did not move this location because it would require moving the entire pipe, which has been there since probably about 1985 or 86. And so that is why that location was chosen. We have a slightly more complicated situation at Rector Place. So if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about Rector Place a bit. And Russ, feel free to jump in if I'm sort of misrepresenting here. So we already did put, if you look, I might have to stand up for this section, just so people in the room can see. So as part of the South project, people might remember we put a tide gate at Rector Place.
Hold on. Yes. Let's Can you give her the pointer because
Oh, the
people
point-
online?
Oh, they only go to the pointer?
Correct.
I didn't know you had a pointer. Do I just hit the top one?
Yes.
Okay, great.
It's a little bit of a lag, but it'll pop up.
there's a slight lag.
You have.
There you go.
That's a Zoom. Is that correct?
There's also a red one and then an arrow.
I'm very not tech savvy right now. This is not.
What's the first thing that you pressed? Because
You can just
Yeah,
say
you
top,
the first
top
thing
left
that's top.
purple.
This one, right?
Oh,
It's giving me this Zoom thing, not,
the little arrows.
oh, I can zoom into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see that this says South BPCR Tiger, this is already offered in some way. It's right, this is not gonna work for me, I'm sorry. If I'm gonna be able to see it, but, anyway, so people in the room, right here, this is the tide gate we installed for the South project. And then this is proposed, but this is the tide gate that we have to install on this 96-inch combined sewer outfall for the Northwest project. As you see here, this is a 54-inch storm, which is what we put the tide gate on for the south. So this work is completely separate and distinctive from the work done earlier on the south, because you can see there are 2 lines of feet in there. Again, tide gate is dependent on the location of the pipe. At this location in particular, we wanted to make sure that we were not obstructing. We had a very tight space to work in because we have that existing tide gate there now, but we wanted to make sure that we were not impacting the entrances to the buildings, specifically on the north side of the street. And again, this is the same situation. If we moved it back, we have to do additional work on the connectors here, which is additional drainage and street reconstruction work that we wanted to try to avoid as much as we possibly could on the back end. Russ, am I expressing that correctly? I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Got it for a minute.
I got it.
That red.
Yep.
There we
There you
go.
go.
There's the red dots. You know, I get the red dots. Where's the one?
Somebody removed the elevator.
I have questions on all these you can.
Oh, let's see. Do you want to do, I mean, do you want to, I guess the question, Alice and Jeff, is do you want to sort of go through this or one more sort of? Okay, we'll go through first, then we'll take.
Let's go through.
Russ, you're on. Oh, Russ, I just wanted to make sure I summarized sort of the constraints we have at both locations correctly, just because Russ Dudley with Arcadis, who you know is the engineer of record for this project.
He can unmute himself.
Oh. Russ,
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to join you this evening. Yes, Claudia, you did cover that pretty well. I think one other item is that the combined sewer and those tide gates, that's all DEP infrastructure. So certainly we also need to work with DEP so that they can access that with their equipment. And that involves some pretty big equipment if it's large tide gates, as would be the case on a 96-inch sewer.
Okay, I'll take over.
I was gonna
If that's all right.
Yeah. sort of-
And then we'll have questions at the end if that's okay for everyone.
And so Dan's gonna walk through.
My frustration is gonna be though, that the questions that you're showing for the designs that you have, it control the emergency access. So any design changes emergency access. And so if we don't look at emergency access questions, then it's meaningless on design because one supports the other.
Yes, emergency access is one of our constraints, which I'll speak to at each street end.
Only constrained by your current design.
No, I'll talk about it in a holistic manner and tell you which aspects of the design are movable as a result.
Because
Does that make sense?
because from the earlier existing and proposed emergency access, it really, the only thing that changes is the path, because the path's curved. It doesn't change, there is existing ambulance and emergency vehicle access there today. It's not.
The current emergency and egress access was north and south
South
of the upper room.
Correct.
And in the new design changes, you've changed it to the center of the opening, which then prevents anything that is at all related to being able to be put there for the design functionality that the community has been asking for since day one. So your design constrained the emergency access.
So I think I get what you're saying. What I'll get to the constraint slide eventually, but we need 12 feet minimum for the emergency vehicle access. And my understanding is that can be at any point within the gate opening. So we'll talk about that as part of this. But Thank you. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Dan Dixon. I'm the Director of Planning and Design at Battery Park City Authority. And as Claudia mentioned, I'm just going to walk through the existing design, talk about some constraints, and have some feedback as part of this ongoing conversation, because nothing is necessarily set in stone at these street ends yet. So you can see here the Albany street end. I'll just do it. Thank you. This is the Albany street end. There are different design nodes on the what we call the wet side, the unprotected side of each of these street ends. That's kind of unique. So at Albany Street, we have what we call the outlook, which are these kind of conjoined seating areas. But on the dry side, there is a lot of opportunity for improvement of that street end. So you can see here an earlier design where we had relocated, if you're familiar with the Scott Burton pieces from the North Cove Marina, we had thought about at an early stage putting them at the street end, but we got a lot of feedback that said that that was not a popular notion. So we're currently thinking about moving them elsewhere. So ignore that on the slide here. Those kind of orange pieces on the bottom part of the screen are not actually part of the design. Next. And just so everyone's aware, so this is existing now that the upper room has been decommissioned, looking toward the Esplanade at Albany Street End. And this is the proposed. So you can see there's movable bollards. Please ignore the stone furniture, as I mentioned, that is no longer part of the design. But all that open space is potential for us to use as long as we acknowledge the constraints. Next. And this is a little further out. So right now you're past the wall, looking toward the Hudson River, and you can see those two conjoined seating areas. One is a little bit higher, so there's a little topography. This is existing, looking south, with Albany on the left here. And this is proposed. So you can see this is the lower level of the two conjoined areas, which is the same level as the Esplanade. But we'll focus mostly on the dry area. Next, on the dry side of the wall. Okay, so you can see here, there are a few constraints that I'll walk you through. First and foremost, you can see there's a light dashed red line. That's the 15-foot tree offset from the flood barrier system that we need to be cognizant of. There's also the 12-foot minimum clearance for the emergency vehicle access, which can go, that's movable. It doesn't have to go exactly where we've shown it here. That's the dashed blue line. And then the tide gate is the smaller red rectangle, and the 6-foot offset that's required for DEP access is the larger one. So nothing permanent can be installed within that larger red rectangle. But we can think about temporary options and installations. And likewise, we can move that 12-foot minimum for emergency vehicle access as needed.
And I would say like temporary, just to be clear, does not mean the sort of like full, what you see like in, let's say, New York City Public Plaza, where it's like the foldable metal tables and chairs. Like we can design something that works a lot better and obviously fits the space and solves some of the things that people are looking for in terms of seating and gathering space. But just to be clear that like removable does not have to be.
Yeah, it can be bigger and heavier, it just can't be nailed down.
It can't be like have foundations essentially, but.
Right,
Yeah,
you can use a machine.
We'll talk about it, but-
I have 1,010 questions, so I'll wait.
Yeah, okay. All right, and as Claudia mentioned, especially with the decommissioning of the upper room, we're sensitive to losing that communal space, and so we'd like to potentially put something back there. So moving to the Rector Place street end. So you can see the street end design here is a little bit different. We call this the conversation room. It's kind of like one of those 1970s conversation pits you see in a living room, but on the Esplanade. And this one is one continuous space along the Esplanade. And I think it would be kind of a nice place to have a book club or some kind of communal gathering there. Next. This is kind of existing. This was actually before the initial tide gate occurred. So you can see what was existing and what is no longer there. And, you know, we were already cognizant that there was a lack of seating and shading and landscaping on the dry side. So we've already worked with our design team to put this little island of seating and landscaping and shade as one option. And that's located on the south side. Next. And just a few more existing and proposed. So this is from the Esplanade looking back at Rector Place existing.
Remove some benches.
And proposed. So here's that conversation room that I was referring to. Next. Okay, so as you might imagine, with these two huge tide gates, there are significant constraints at this street edge. So similar to Albany Street, there is the 15-foot offset from the flood barrier system itself. Then there's the 12-foot minimum clearance for the emergency vehicle access, which can be, you know, it's limited a little bit more by the Rector Gate, which is still there. It's going to be protected in place during construction. But my understanding is that it can move somewhat. It can probably overlap more with that red dashed area. And then you see the two tide gates. The two smaller shapes are the tide gates themselves, and then the thicker red dash line around that is represents the 6-foot offset. And I'm including there the DEP access that is required from the street end. And then you can see also on the left side, I'm sorry, go back one more. You see that little island of the proposed landscaping and seating. Okay, next. Now, just so we cover all three of the street ends on the South Esplanade, West Thames does not have any tide gate work envisioned. So things are a little bit more open design-wise there. But one design move that we've done here is angle the gate to give a little bit more room to the Esplanade here. So after Regatta, it bends a little bit further east to capture a little bit more on the wet side.
Here, I would just add that we're very limited by the location. If you look closest to the gate is a dotted line. That's the relieving platform. So we're really constrained in terms of the location of the relieving platform here compared to some other locations. We can't we can't push that gate back further because then we're adding additional loading on there, which we're trying to avoid. So this location in particular, which is why the gate has like a bit of this is not a design term, but like a janky angle that you don't see at other locations. Like usually it's more straight, but here because of the way the street geometry is also, it's sort of at an odd angle. We tried to move with the existing street geometry and find a way to do it and also maximize the opening here, which was
Is that why the opening is not wider and you didn't put the gates where the regular wall is?
Yeah, at this location, yeah, that's why it's like, it couldn't be as wide as some of the other ones because we did have this constraint in terms of going straight across.
The geometry of
The
the street
geometry of
end,
it was
right.
like, it looked very odd because the street itself is on like an angle, a bit of an angle.
See if I can put
I have an option.
Okay, so the leaving platform that Claudia was mentioning, let's see if I can get this, is this dashed line here. So basically, west of that dashed line is over water. It's cantilevered platform over water. And everything on this side is terra firma, and that's what we need to put our structure on. Next. So just some existing and proposed. So this is from from the West Thames street end looking toward the Esplanade. Next. And as envisioned, you can see where the opening is there. Next. And here is, so you might be familiar with the art installation called Sitting Stance, which is already at the street end and it's being relocated and reconfigured along the Esplanade here.
Great.
Okay, and next steps, obviously we want to keep this conversation going and come back to you and keep the conversation going in next year and also continue to update you with construction progress. Thanks very much.
I would just add on that one, with the community board, certainly, but to the extent that it makes sense to have maybe a working session or something where we can pick a night out and have other folks from the community come in and talk about this. We want to make sure the community board has has a chance to weigh in, we want to make sure that we're also inviting other folks into the conversation, but we might not have been part of these conversations. We have a little bit of a longer lead time here in terms of time. We want to make sure we're getting as a broad-based consensus about what these particular street events might look like.
Can you just identify what that timeline is and what you're doing in terms of that greater community?
So I think we wanna start having like, whether it's just sort of a design workshop or like sort of a group to come together and talk about how people want to see us improve the seating at the locations. I think we do still have to like structure that, and I think we'd like feedback on what we think might work the best. People can get very planned out on things for sure, so finding a sort of the setting that makes the most sense. And I think that we wanna start that, Alice, to answer your question, like in January, and sort of do this level of engagement, you know, seeing, again, cadence works, having enough time to sort of go back, take feedback, report out, then incorporate more, similar to how I think we've done lots of engagements here, like report back, and then, I mean, in terms of how long a duration it might be, hard to say, because we really don't know what we're designing for yet, so let's initiate the process in January.
Did you respond to the letter that we sent in August with all the feedback that we had collated about all the street ends and all the seating?
Yeah. Actually, I may have responded in writing, but we did, in terms of all the seating itself, we actually did, I was not in the office, so I did not speak to it, but I know that we did go back to our design team and take your feedback about World's Fair benches and increasing linear seating to the team, and they're actually have been working on it. Dan has been taking the lead on working with them to increase the amount of World's Fair, just not like, because I know that what we heard from people was not all cement benches. That was something we did not want to break, all the poured cement benches. It's not what people wanted to see. We were able to address some of that through sort of wood cladding of those benches, but in other locations, there was a desire to have, especially at Rector Place, because there's existing World's Fair benches there, to add more World's Fair benches. They are looking at that. Dan, you can probably speak to where they are in the process.
I think before we start with new working groups, we'd like a more detailed answer and see, you know, for the feedback and the work the community board's already done, you know, responses in the design to the work that we've done.
Sure.
I sent it on September 30th, I sent it.
Okay.
Great.
The August 4th letter?
And I think some of it was, yes, we're still looking at it.
Right.
And so I think it's appropriate to say,
yeah,
you know, here was the starting point, here's how we've changed, this is what's changed.
And how,
and, you know, let's have it from that point, because.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense.
Great.
Yeah, we can share the original Rector Place street end that did not have that island with additional seating and landscaping to refresh everyone's memory of what was and what
Each
is.
street end
Yep.
was given specific feedback, both went.
Yes, yes. And I'd like to see more shading and seating on the dry side as well, so we can work together to see what are the best.
It's a good point though. It's a good starting point though, Tammy. Just the idea is that like, you gave us really good feedback, which we took back to the team and we're like, find a solution for this. And so we should come back and show just sort of, again, the before and after, but show exactly how we incorporate it based on the feedback that you gave us.
So this will be happening in January at potential Battery Park City Committee meeting, or is it somewhere else this is going to occur?
I think we have to probably figure that part out, just because, again,
I think we're probably gonna want some kind of working group meetings where we can have like an in-depth kind of back and.
Yeah. You can put a night out at a time that works and.
yeah, I think it's probably, that's what might be, rather than committee, obviously you guys have other business to handle too, but so if there's a working group we can have, and again, make sure that we're inclusive of everybody who has vested interest in these particular street ends too, so we're getting as much of the feedback from as many people as we possibly can. I think that that's a good place to start, and we're actually like excited to continue to have this conversation, because I think Dan can agree with this. Like, we've gone back and forth with our design team too about like, what else can we do? Like, are there other options we have? Like, understanding that there are, again, like lots of limitations and things that are outside of our control, and like, we get that, but at the same time, is there more that we can do? So we're looking forward to doing this.
And when do you foresee the plans being done?
Well, the plans for this street
These
end,
3 street ends, yeah.
I mean, we haven't started the conversation, so I couldn't say for certain.
Well,
I
when,
think-
when do they need to be done?
We have time, we have a lot of lead time for this, that's, we have, some lead time for sure.
Sorry, I want an answer to the question.
So
Yeah, go
So the overall project has already been bought by the contractors.
Right.
You know, so anything we do design-wise from now on will be a change order.
Oh.
So the timeline is fairly open-ended in that way.
But we have the flexibility, it can be, we can make this, if people want this to be sort of a shorter term turnaround. Like if we want it to be like a 6-month process, so that way we have something like in the books that we can work on, we can do that. But in terms of like, Alice, we don't have something set in our minds, like this is going to be X. Like I would just say we're sort of early in the.
I think Dan answered it. You have a contract and it's, so there'll be small modifications. Okay, I'm
But,
gonna take.
I mean, I don't think he said the small modifications. I think he was just saying that like it's a change order, which it is, but I don't think he said that they're,
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll have to
Could
work-
be big, you're right, could be a
But
big
it's a
modification.
contractual issue that's like not sort of, it's part of this conversation, but it's not this whole.
Well, you're past schematic design in this.
But this is, again, this is running parallel to the rest of the project. It's a parallel track. Our project is, we have 100% design on the project. The project is bid out. We have contractors on site, obviously. So this is running parallel to that work that's ongoing.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. You'll have to identify
Yeah.
what this working group is, where it's taking place. This is a public meeting. Folks are gonna want to know. I leave it to you to
Right, we
figure
do like
that.
a public
But
workshop.
let us know this week what the parameters are for those, answering those questions, just because we don't seem to have it for tonight. So
No,
let's,
we don't, we definitely don't have it for tonight, so that's fair.
understood. So let's, start, yeah. We'll start with basic questions. I think we'll do it, do we want to do it street end by street end, some general, yes, Tammy's saying yes. So Tammy, why don't
can
you
you pull
lead
up
us
the
off here?
Albany Street again? If we
Okay, so
start with the
starting
first,
with Albany Street.
start with the
question-
first one presented, right?
Yeah. Thanks.
So I have questions in terms of what we're talking about for the finality of like the conversation. So
Tammy, which one of the Albany ones do you?
the very first one they showed,
Right after the DEP.
nope, with the
With the
D,
DEP one? Okay, so I think it's slide 4. I think it's probably slide 4 or 5.
and then I can probably.
This one?
Forward. Yes,
Yeah.
that's perfect. Okay, so my question on here, it's a little bit more difficult to see than, for example, the Rector Street one. So I'm trying to zoom in to understand where, when you show the proposed tide gate, doesn't seem to match up with the geometry of the street as it's being shown, unless there's something wrong that I can see, because that actually looks like the tide gate is in the middle of the cul-de-sac. Like looking at knowing where the gateway building is, where the end and where it goes around, that tide gate looks exactly to me like it's in the cul-de-sac. Now, if it's not in the cul-de-sac, then I'm a little confused simply because where you're showing the building, which is Hudson Towers, and the corner of Gateway, that's in the cul.
Yeah, I think that's the fault of the drawing. It doesn't show the street very clearly, does it? And we can get back to you about that.
Yeah, can we go to the other one? I think the one that has a constraint probably has a better, like the one that's the plan view with the constraint. I think it's probably maybe clearer than this one. Just because it's actually,
That's the end of the Albany section.
yeah.
There we go.
There it is.
So where it's an east-west pipe, or is it a north-south pipe?
It's an east-west.
And there was no way to move it further east. And I'd like to understand why. If you're staying on the pipeline, why it couldn't move further east?
I think it's because we would have to move the pipe.
No, further east means we would have to do
You mean
interventions
the tide
on
gate,
multiple.
the tide gate further east, or?
Yeah.
The tide gate further east, as I said, we have to do treatments on all the pipes surrounding that showed that it was the drainage for the patios, it was another water line, it was.
But they don't line up to what we see here. That's what I'm trying to understand. There's no, I mean, from where you walk and what you see, there's no other drainage there. Like the drainages that you're talking about are further north and south of that. So I'm not understanding when I'm taking a look at this, and, you know, I'm just a layman walking on the street here, but it doesn't seem to me to be necessarily all lining up with what I'm looking at and being shown. And that's one of the things that we asked very, very early on, right? It's not about,
Is there,
So,
Sorry,
I
can
mean,
we go back to
like,
the- oh,
okay,
yeah,
so,
perfect.
okay, so
We have to do basically put controls on all of those, so that 12-inch storm connection, the 12, we have to do all of that if we move that tie, in addition to moving that tie gate further east. So we'd have to we'd have to move the tie gate, and then we'd have to do basically improvements on all of those that are shown on that diagram.
So,
Is that correct,
but
Russ?
that tide gate doesn't exist currently, correct? It's a proposed tide gate.
Right,
Which is different than what we were told, which was we're renovating an existing tide gate. This is not existing, this is brand new, because there was not one there before, because the upper room had no trunk or.
And it's a stormwater as opposed to a CSO, which is, this is, Russ, can you talk about that a little bit? About why there isn't an existing here, but we're putting a new tie gate in, and maybe not like super technical,
Yeah.
just talk about.
Well, and the question for me is, why here and not any other location? Like, for example, at the bottom of Liberty, which is over by a volleyball court, where nothing permanent is on top of that, just a volleyball net. Why was Albany chosen and not Liberty?
Yeah, so I'd be happy to kind of, is it
You're
okay?
asking, I just questions, and I'm not the person who did the engineering, and I'd like to have Russ answer the question.
Sure.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Russ Dudley with Arcadis, leading the interior drainage work on the project. There are existing tide gates that are owned by DEP on the combined sewer outfalls. Those are located closer to the regulators, basically near the interceptor, and that's to prevent water from coming into the city's combined sewer system and kind of overwhelming the treatment plants themselves. In cases where we have those existing tide gates, we are also placing tide gates downstream on those combined sewer overflows very close to the barrier so that we can cut off any water that would come into the protected area. In this case, this specific one is a stormwater outfall. It does not impact the water going into the city's combined sewer system, which is why we need to put a new tide gate on at this location. And again, we want to put that as close to the barrier as possible so that we can prevent water from coming in through those outfalls to the protected area. And we also have additional drainage that's located along the wall that we have to add new pipes in to tie into the protected area as well. And so you can see actually a new pipe here that's located along the barrier that then enters upstream of that tide gate to protect that.
Russ, if I could quickly add, this is Marty with DEP, and Tammy, thank you for the question a couple weeks ago. We do have the existing infrastructure, right, that was here way before. We have two gates that have been here for a while. The first one was, I believe, installed in 1960, and then the second one, also made of cast iron, came on in 1986. If there was a follow-up into, like asking us to move those, there's absolutely no way that we can move things that we've installed that are working, right? These hold billions of gallons of water, so those will stay.
Not arguing of staying, of
Yeah.
moving your pipe. The question is, they're adding a new tide gate. And the question is, with all of the stuff that DEC and DEP has shared with us, why Albany Street specifically? Why the middle of the Esplanade opening area? It's been a topic that we've talked about for 5 years. Arcadis has known this pre-COVID. So why couldn't, the answer we got in the beginning was, well, it would take a lot of coordination. And we weren't worried.
I want to understand like where that came from though, because we've done a lot of coordination.
Because we asked about putting it further towards the street.
And sorry, if you wouldn't mind me asking either, and I know I've only been at the agency for a year, but who at DEP were you?
It wasn't DEP, it was with all the engineers, it was with Arcadis. It was in the beginning, it was at Stuyvesant and the round tables, it was at
We did our workshop.
BMCC workshops, been to many of them, but the question remained the same and it was never changed. And that's my complete frustration, because the conversation of, well, you need to have an access way for the emergency vehicles. You designed the openings and the pathways. So where now the upper room is there and there's 2 emergency lanes left and right of what was the upper room, you've now said, no, you can't do that. and redesigned to do the emergency lane where the emergency lane is and the tide gate where the tide gate is. The construction team told me it was an engineering and design decision before. So my question became, okay, and that's what I told you, the gentleman you said misspoke at the meeting from Turner. Okay, then why wouldn't we be able to move the proposed tide gate 20 feet east? To allow,
We answered that, but we answered then we have to do improvements on every single other thing on the street. Which means more drainage work, means we dig up more of the street during construction, which means we have to, but let me just finish, is that I understand your point, right? But if we move it further east and we move it into the bed of the street, we move it into the cul-de-sac, which I agree, nobody uses, as you said, we still, that pipe ties into other systems on the street. It's not a solo, like it's not as if it doesn't connect to anything else. And so everything that it connects to, we have to make sure that we're not causing a problem on every single one of those lines when we're doing an improvement on this line. And this is done, just to be clear, like we did this in consultation with DEP.
was it studied ever? I understand you're saying it could cause problem, but was it ever actually studied to go further east, like we asked?
I would have to honestly check any of the interior drainage reporting that we did, but
I mean, Russ was from the beginning.
Sorry if I
Russ, I understand that Russ has been here since we executed the contract with them in 2022. I've been here too, but again, in terms of all the scenarios that they were asked to model from a DEP perspective, I can't speak to that with like clarity at this moment.
And
So.
Tammy, and just to echo what Claudia said, I check with capital on our team. I check with water and sewer capital. There were no other locations that were ever considered that at least DEP was brought to. So, and I mean, trust me, since you sent me that, we've been looking and looking and looking. There's been nothing additional, so.
And I am disappointed is the nicest, frustrated completely when the community spoke in the very beginning that this was an asset, an area, and everything that was beloved. We understood, okay, the upper room had to come down, but the use, I mean, the community's voice never changed on that particular area. And I think that's what's the most frustrating, right? Is it was never looked at as far as I could find anywhere in everything that I looked at. And I'm nowhere near Jeff Galloway, who has an amazing ability to like sort through thousands of pages, right? And look at, props where you get them, trust me. But it's super frustrating because I understand from our perspective, what was the worst was not the tide stuff that came over, is obviously the conversations that Alice has talked about and many others. The storm drains are the worst, right? And the overflow from that was more damaging in areas of Battery Park City than anything that came over from the water, anything. All the problems that were surrounding the south side of Battery Park City around the buildings that didn't get anything from the water, like Millennium and Ritz and down in those areas, that was from storm drainage. And that was from everything that came down, not over the edge. So the conversations that we've been having is, well, we don't want to change anything on the 18-inch storm drain or the patio drainage or the storm connections. I wanted to know what studies were done about putting the tide gate further east and maybe would it improve the drainage? And that, from what I'm hearing from DEP, that was what I considered. And that's.
Let me ask a technical question that might partially answer Tammy's question as well. It looks to me like if you were to move the tide gate, I'm looking here at the same thing that's up there. If you were to move it east beyond the connection to the patio drainage green line, then in a storm surge situation, that patio drainage would back up. Is that correct? Is that a constraint? Is that the reason why it can't move further east? Is that it can't, the furthest east it can go without building two tide gates would be that intersection, which is, I don't know, just a few feet east.
How many feet is that? Is that 10
I
feet?
mean,
Does it,
Yeah.
Might be.
right, how far is it?
Yeah, if I can weigh in here too, particularly about the additional drainage that's coming in on the upstream protected side. That patio drainage is new infrastructure that's put in place so that we can make sure that any water that is captured on the protected side of the wall is directed to an outfall that can drain to the harbor, to the waterfront there. The risk
it's
of
new.
moving the tide gate further upstream of all these tie-ins is that those are additional entry points for water to come in to the protected side. And so certainly, as Claudia mentioned before, you would need to put on additional protection devices, tide gates onto all of those individual lines. But one of the significant risks that we look at when we start laying out drainage infrastructure is how many different points of entry there can be through the wall, and try to limit that as much as possible. So the further we move that east, the more potential points of entry there are, the more opportunities for water to come in and enter the protected side through the sewer system.
So all the green lines are brand new. So it's not about this 12-inch storm connection patio drainage, because that's coming with you, that's new. And you're saying that none of it could move, nothing could move closer to the 18-inch storm that's existing there. Because that looks like it's, I don't know, 10 feet, 20 feet, it's impossible to tell from here.
Yeah, you're saying, can we move all that additional new infrastructure as well with that? Is that the question?
The question was, how far east could it move?
Well, the tide gate itself?
And the 12-inch storm, which you just told us was brand new, the patio drainage. That's a new addition.
Yeah, I mean, we could always look at tying in infrastructure differently. It is a little bit challenging here to put in new infrastructure between the wall and the existing system, because we have to route that in some pretty small places. I think the big challenge here is not so much that patio drainage, but the other constraints that kind of come into play within the 10 feet there, with additional infrastructure and where to place that tide gate itself. We generally look to place the tide gate in the best location first, and then route the smaller infrastructure around that.
And I would say, if you've ever walked around Battery Park City, particularly in this area, those catch basins are not particularly well functioning. There's a lot of, if you've walked your dog down on Albany Street and around, there's a lot of flooding around there. So, perhaps.
Tammy, sorry, I mean, if I may, I know that it also like to be, I mean, if you need us to take a look at something, we're happy to. But I mean, again, going back to this gate issue, I don't think there's any sort of reconsideration that DEP is going to be doing, at least from what I'm being told.
And it doesn't sound
That's
to me.
not from BPC, that's from Arlene.
But it also sounds to me like BPCA never went back and took the consideration that we
I
had.
actually said that I do not have the specifics on what we studied, so I will go back and look, but we may not have, based on feedback from DP. So I did not say with certainty, I want to be clear, that I said that I don't know what we studied from an interior drainage perspective, and I'll go back and look at the work that we did, and I'll talk to Russ about it, but.
And DEP says they never saw an alternate plan.
No, it's not that we didn't see one, I could not find one up to
You
this.
could not find one up to today.
But that doesn't mean there isn't one that exists, so we're still looking into it, I came with as much information as we have.
I appreciate that. It's,
But
you can understand my frustration.
Yeah. I completely understand.
Still ask.
But I wouldn't say
Still
that it's outstanding.
Still asking.
It might be outstanding.
All right, so let's go back to the design stuff, because it's being designed around what the tide gate location, wet and dry. And the questions and the conversations are, if the question from the community was how to retain an asset or create an asset that's similar to what was there, which was a communal space, not on the water, but pulled back a little bit, right? We're not talking about having a dining space that was on the edge of the water. What was nice about where the upper room was located is it had a level of intimacy outside of the pathway. Right, so having something that set back from the pathway was exactly the goal. Unfortunately, on the designs that you have, they're all based, everything is based on the tide gate offset and the giant, roller gate, the flood barrier wall. So I guess one of the questions on the flood barrier wall is, are we facing the same thing here as you have stated at West Thames? That the reason why it's quote jinky and has to come inland is that dotted line is the edge of the relieving platform. And is there any?
Also, I would note at this location, it is the facade, the water facing facade of Gateway. Because we have to skirt around, and Jeff, you've seen this too, like, we have to skirt through the terraces that they have, like, but the relieving platform is a constraint as well.
So
I think what, Tammy, I think we can create an asset with similar functionality within these constraints here, just eyeballing it. And I think that should be our objective.
I'm hope so. And then I guess my other question on the flood barrier wall and the deployable, at all of these points, if opening the edges and keeping it far more open in terms of a look, why not do a longer deployable and pull back further to the edge of the buildings? Why do the walls have to come so far in?
This is actually something that we worked at all these locations. This is as far as we could pull it back and as long as we could go for some of these locations. Because of where because of the fact that it's not even on both sides, sort of there's not a perfect geometry at any of these street ends. Maybe at Rector slightly, but even there it's a bit off. And so the idea is that like it has to come in the way this is. We worked with the team too to maximize openings as much as possible and to not have, like, we did it, if you've noticed up by the Irish Hunger Memorial and the Lily Pond, there's a very big opening there because we had a lot more space to work with and we're at upper level, but because the platform is close, it doesn't give us that kind of flexibility.
And deployables weren't an option.
This is a deployable. A roller flip up was not an option here. We did look at it. The footprint and the amount of space you need for it to rest in the sidewalk didn't work here with the platform constraints. I think we talked about this actually probably at the public meeting we had last year too in June, but we talked through, because we did look at flip up gates because we also had a preference because they have very little visible footprint. Like they look like pavers, you don't see them, but they were not appropriate for these locations just because you have to have this trench. The only place it worked was at South End Avenue because we have more space to work with.
Do you have an image of, and I'm gonna open it up for a few other folk who might have questions. I don't know if there are any, but, if you can just take.
Would also like them to show in their next slide what like the imagination would be, because the walls are tall
Is there
and dark.
an image of it in 3 dimensions, a perspective? I thought
Yeah.
there was of Albany Street. Can you pull that up? What slide number is that?
It's like 2 or 3 after this.
Yeah, if you go back,
Might help folks
if
to.
you go back a few.
Go back.
Yeah,
How do you
go back.
Go back?
Yeah.
I thought it was, I don't actually.
Oh, here we
We were
go.
at the
Here's
end
the
of Albany.
proposed. Okay, so.
One more, I think, will be the.
One more,
The
yeah.
end of Albany Street.
Yes.
That's the end of Albany Street.
So
Without-
North of Scottsburg.
And how high is the wall there on the
8
right?
feet.
8 feet.
From where we're looking. Okay.
And there's no way to do any kind of different treatment like you have over at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, which has glass or anything. An 8-foot wall is very imposing and not incredibly safe. Like you can't see past it, can't see on either side of it. There's safety concerns, there's views, there's.
Correct, we don't have any latitude to change the height or the.
We're closer to the
spans.
water here too.
Yeah.
It's different than at MJH. We're further back. I believe this was in response to, I know this is not what people want to hear, but we heard this a lot, like at a bunch of locations on the water. We heard this at the Gateway Restaurant. We heard this at the Regatta. These locations are much closer and there's less buffer between the actual river and the walls themselves. I understand the walls are high. We're also looking at lighting to make sure we don't create unsafe spaces. That's something that we also Dan and I had a particular concern about, that you don't want to create a space that feels unsafe for people, especially in a residential neighborhood. Again, these are sort of the same.
There's nothing that you're doing on the wet side that would control or absorb or anything that would enable you to lower the walls at all.
No, we cannot lower the wall height. We do have but we can't do berming. We don't have, again, we're building on a platform over water. It really is limiting in terms of the load limitations, in terms of what kind of fill we can put on it, which is why I don't want to bring this up, but like we had to elevate Wagner Park significantly. Like and we had to basically fortify all the piles underneath. It's not a structure that can support that level of weight. We did look at it. We looked at adding grassy areas. People did not like them in public engagement. They were worried about dogs. You know, we tried to find other options, like through, we went to.
Sorry, we're snickering about dogs. It's like the largest conversation.
And sure, like, it's a big conversation people have, but I mean, that was a big thing, like, one of these grassy areas that could create some sort of buffer, people are like, people are gonna bring their dogs on there, and there should be dogs on lawns, like, it was the whole thing.
So let me interrupt you, because you have people that would prefer to have an 8-foot wall than a grassy berm?
No, it wasn't either or, it was in a different.
Oh, it wasn't, okay.
No, it was not, I think
think
that we
so.
know the answer there, no, that was.
Yeah, I
that
was a
was-
little, yeah, I know, but thinking some of those meetings. I'm just curious, and I guess I look to you, the design, I'm always curious about these walls, and people have talked about this forever. Are there any other possibilities of integrating seating, and what are we, where are you at with actual discussion of the materials and the treatment of the wall surface itself? I mean, that comes up quite a bit. Is there any, I don't want to say improvement, but I will, on, just a block wall like that?
Are you asking if we can integrate seating within the wall?
For example, that would be one question. And two, where are you at with kind of material sort of securing that we don't have to see this as a surface for graffiti? Things you hear about frequently in all these meetings over the years. Is there
Sure,
anything
that's-
new here?
That's an interesting idea about integrating seating.
I think we have some,
looked at
I think
that.
we have some in certain locations, like we have it along, we don't have a picture here today because it wasn't, we were gonna talk about, but like around the marina. The
Yeah.
flood wall, seating is integrated into the flood wall all around the marina, around the ferry terminal, along the North Esplanade, where it's sort of by Tribeca Point and by, Stuyvesant. I think in terms of materiality, so we have been working, at Albany Street, we have a large mock-up that's there. We have another one at Third Place, where we're looking at like how, to your point, Alex, about graffiti coating, how it responds to cleaning, the bullnose pattern, how we do wayfinding like on the wall itself, so people, for directional signage. Also the color, the form liner, the recurve, like we've done sort
The
of.
ceiling color.
The ceiling color, the grout, like we're doing all that on site as well.
Has that been discussed in, I'm not in your committee, right? So that's been,
Yeah.
so that's not something that we need to.
And there's no
review
way to
today.
make any of it living wall, it all has to be just flat wall.
Okay.
Oh, in terms of having like growth on it, you mean? It's really not, I think that it's something that we've heard, but it didn't really, there was concern probably about like undermining over time and how do you actually like make sure that it grows in a way that is maintainable, so.
Well, isn't this all being redone in 50 years? That was the last conversation that we were told. In 50 years, all of this would be redone, so.
Yeah, but it has to protect for the period before you redo it.
Right.
And if it becomes, again, you don't know if the species becomes invasive and you have these climbing vines and things like that. I think we have a couple of cases where we have trellises where we have that, like around the regatta, but it's like very limited application and that's on like a wooden structure, not on the flood wall itself.
And in terms of integrated seating, it didn't make a lot of sense in this location because we wanted to have landscape kind of hide the wall to some extent. And in terms of having residences and patios right behind the wall, from a sound transmission point of view, that wouldn't be very popular.
I mean, I don't see this as a night for a design charrette, but obviously this is an extraordinary opportunity for any designer and for the authority to get it right. You're setting a precedent that's immense,
Sure.
extraordinary impact on everybody's lives, both for good and for bad, potentially. So, I can only say that, I've simply exhausted every possibility on what these walls can and can't be. Are we, not sure we're writing resolution, but if we are there things we're covering here? And I'm looking to Jeff on this because this is more your area, less about the drainage and more about the aesthetics of the area. And Tammy, what's the next move here?
Well, I think we do want to engage on further design of the street ends. And I mean, I hear the authority basically suggesting that as well. I'm a little agnostic on whether we need a resolution on that subject as opposed to a resolution after we've had some of the meetings to evaluate what what's been presented to us. Tell me, what say you?
Yeah, the committee generally.
I mean, I'd love to hear from the committee, we're still waiting to see final or in progress changes from the September letter and our August feedback, and that hasn't been shown in any of what we've seen today. So
So
I think
that's
that would
promised
be
in
step-
January, right? And
I
you'll
think that would be
define,
step
I think we
one.
could share it before then.
and I'm not sure if the working group that exists now already.
No, it doesn't. It would be
Okay.
like a new iteration. If we
Let's
can work with
get
whomever
that
makes sense.
going maybe before the new year, so we kind of have it in place.
I think we have enough names and numbers and everything that we can definitely get that going for section by section. But I think that, you don't want to tell the folks on the North Battery Park City side that they don't have a placement in the south if they're using the spaces. So I think we just need to be as inclusive as we can be.
Yeah, the north isn't as problematic as the south because the street ends
Yeah,
are.
the street end treatments are, it's on a similar where we have these like very sort of distinct, like also the burst of water because River Terrace, like it's very different. But you meant engaging people who live in the north.
Correct.
Yes.
I do. I mean, the designs we're looking at today are exactly the same design pattern. There's nothing we've seen here today that you brought us that's different than or reflects the feedback that you even gave us in September. So it's hard to do a resolution because we have nothing to do it on. You've already heard all the feedback that we're saying, right? There's nothing new. There are concerns when you go to Rector that people have raised about seating and other things. And even some of the slides that you brought today, and I don't mean this to be disparaging, but even the ones that showed like what it was, were missing the benches that we knew were there, right? That they were actually.
At the tail end of the street, it's fair. I mean, it's the timing of when we got those photos too. Like, we acknowledge, right, where they have the scaffolding today, there's a semicircle of benches that are at the end of Rector Place. Like, we know that they're there, we've seen them, but they may not be represented in a photo that we showed.
Right, so I think that it would not be as productive to try and do a resolution. I think if the Battery Park City Authority came back to us saying, here's updated designs for each, we've heard you, we're gonna try and work on,
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what I'd like to see at maybe the first working group meeting. Have you guys?
I'd actually like to see that in January to help focus the working group, because I think that the public needs to see that.
That's fine, no.
I think that that is an important aspect, because we can't say, yeah, they heard us and they're gonna work on something when everything we're looking at is something we've seen before.
Yeah. I mean, we've now seen the physical constraints.
Yeah.
That doesn't answer the question of what can be done with those. And I'm not a designer, but I think you're hearing, at least at the end of Albany, we would like type space functionally similar to the upper room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe we didn't do as good a job setting the table for tonight as we could have. Tonight was really about constraints and what's possible. And we'd love to explore design options in the future.
Yeah.
I think we do owe you though, Tammy, it's a fair point. Since we've had the team working on these revisions to the seating in particular, I think we just need to get that from them. We actually have an internal meeting with them this week. But we can reach out to them beforehand to get that turned around, so we can send that to you before, and hopefully before the holiday, but that's wishes, but to get them to you before January, just so you have a chance to look at them and have a clear before and after. Because sometimes those drawings are also in a way that's not that legible, so making sure that we have a legible version, and we have, I think, a verse. This was existing linear square feet. This is proposed, and I think location by location is really important too, before I reach. So, I mean, we've seen some draft versions of that, but I think we can get you that. That's not, we can be responsive to that. And again, we do owe you that, and apologies for not bringing that. But I think we wanted to talk about, there were some specific questions raised about sort of existing proposed and constraints, and we wanted to talk about that. But I think we have some homeworks.
And I still want to hear, when we're talking about the constraints, it's frustrating to me to hear constraints because it's self-made constraints when we don't know if we don't know if it was studied or not. We don't know, the constraints are also now based on current designs, on choices that were made on both Esplanade and Wet and Dry. So the question is, where are the flexibility points within that? Is the seating area set at the end of Rector Place that you have the, whatever you called it, the reading, the waterside reading area? What does it look like? Because you're not adding 8-foot walls to an area that has 0 walls.
Well, remember, we're replacing the privacy wall, so lots of wall there now. I know that at the
But
street ends.
on the street ends,
Yeah.
there aren't 8-foot walls.
That's right.
And so it's a major change, even on Rector, where you're looking, like the Rector end that you had existing had benches all around. And that was actually the big open area to view the water because there's park behind it. And it looks like the Battery Park City Authority made a change to close in the Rector end at the water. So you actually don't see the water from Rector. And
That's not true.
That's true. I think it'd be the way it's rendered.
We worked really hard to maximize the opening as much as possible within the engineering.
And also to keep the view corridor, like again, I think we were mindful of that, but again, maybe the rendered view and not the intention. So-
when you compare what you have in your presentation that you showed today, Rector Place Street ending versus Rector Place Street end proposed, it's very different. That is the street end that looks like it is more closed in, and has something different than what was Albany. So where Albany, we had, the upper room there, and you could see the water around it, right? And it wasn't that vast openness. Rector used to be vast openness. And in everything that you've shown us now, that vast openness on Rector is not there. And you look like it was moving from point A to point B. I mean, I'm just looking at what I'm saying.
Yes, by definition, the opening is narrower now than.
It was before. No, I mean,
Than it was.
I think we're familiar with it. I mean, I think again, like this, I mean, again, I think we have our takeaways and like our homework here.
I would do them.
See, that is, all right, so go back to the one that you saw with the benches, the missing benches, which is just the straight view on Rector, right? Existing, and then do the proposed. And you'll see exactly the difference of,
Yes, it is narrower.
I think also the perspective is a little bit far away.
and there's currently on Rector, there is not one tree straight forward. It's a straight line to the water on Rector with like a promenade of trees, I guess you'd call it, left and right. And the left and right promenade trees are now necessarily gone, and you've closed it in on the water side. You understand where I'm
I
going?
understand.
Yeah, that was a design choice.
Yeah, those design choices. But again, these are again, not new design choices. I believe we even had these back at the 60% design. So, I mean, I think, again, we can look at how we make adjustments to these seating areas at the street ends, but, again, I think that we need to go back and make sure that the team has fully incorporated the feedback you guys provided us in August, which was in response to that June meeting, where I think we showed a lot of these, but,
Let's just talk about timing a second, because the holiday's coming up. Battery Park City Committee meeting is always early in the month, and I believe our next meeting is on the 8th. I mean, if you can have stuff by the 8th, that would be good.
But it wasn't January 2nd, which is.
No,
Thursday.
No, it's not, well, that's a good question, but I believe the 2nd is
It would.
Friday.
In the middle
Okay,
of there,
okay.
you're right, that's true.
Yeah.
Push it to this
I think
side.
that should be okay.
You would have to-
But it should be, I think it should be okay. We have enough lead time to enact that from the team, and then we'll just double check.
On the wall.
Yeah.
I don't think we're
Regular
You
time.
by putting these trees in.
Which
I don't know,
Yeah.
something's very, no, we're on the 6th, the Tuesday.
We're on the 5th.
Well, we can tell them that.
Yes. We're on the
It's more green.
It's just. Still, I
To
think,
be able to get some stuff in this.
let's just, can you give us
Over the
a
holidays. perfect time.
day or so? I think we probably might have it, but I think I'd like to have like a day or so just to double check to make sure that's doable. And then we get back to you before end of week. I just want to say, yes, we can, and everybody on their design team was put this together is away for the holiday. 'Cause that would be.
Well, I mean, recognizing that, I mean, we're not on an emergency time frame here.
But we want to be responsive and like, we don't want to forget that we had this conversation either, so.
Right, we want, when we all remember what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's always good.
It's shorter and shorter.
Right. All right, so a lot of committee members from both committees are here for this last of the joint committee efforts. By the way, with this image, I was just saying, Claudia, you see it and, yeah, right. You see it very clearly where you have people seated along the granite benches, but you wonder if that seating could be, of course, incorporated with the back of the flood wall. You know, you almost
Yes.
What does that mean, you know?
And, you know, I think we can brainstorm ways we can change this. This is not necessarily, set.
You know, it's the old good, good.
I mean, I think
that's
that like,
good
yeah, I
neighbors.
think that we
That-
also need to, the challenge we do need to do is like need to unfold, like we have to get the access to the front and back side of the wall for like maintenance and but again, I think we can look, we'll just.
I'm not pretending
Yeah.
this is easy. I'm just saying that was what I was talking about. And
Yeah.
yeah, it may not be able to be done, but just was apparent in this slide. In any case, are there other people that had comments or questions? I'm not seeing the online, just to see if there's anybody. And a big thank you to everybody who came. I don't see anyone. So I'm assuming that unless Jeff, you have other thoughts on this particular item,
No, I think we're done.
we are, anybody else? Okay, great.
Done with the environmental committee.
We're done with the, oh, yes, go.
The floodgate, what does it look like? Is it a grate? Is it visible?
It's a roller gate.
No, sorry, not that gate, the tide gate.
Oh,
It's also subsurface.
Yeah, but it's like a box essentially, and it has like a flap on it, so it's like a flapper, so like when I do this every time I talk about it, it's like flapper, but that's literally what it is, it's like, basically when the tide comes in, the flap goes down. And then it keeps the water from backing into the system.
But what do I walk on? Like, would I?
You can walk on like.
Regular paving.
Or there's like a larger, like a DP type, it'll say like, sorry, Department of Environmental Protection, be like one of those big like square grates.
Like
It's
metal.
not an open grate, but it's like a metal, yeah.
Would it look like the grades that are on the north side of Gateway and Kowski Plaza that World Trade Center uses to access their boat?
On the upper Kowski, no, because they have the metal, that's like where the water is grading a bit, it's more of like a hatch type grade.
It's more like a ball.
They have like at Stuyvesant Plaza, they have some of them for the size, they have those big rectangular ones, it's more like that.
Well, there's one at.
And there's one at Rector now, you can go and take a look.
Yeah, and they're in a rector, but yeah, no, it's not like the 430 ones where they have like it's actually grading, it's not like that, it'll be sort of close.
And they're gonna come
The
back.
reason to move it, Tammy, if I could ask you, what's your,
In order to
Purpose
get a
in-
gathering, in order to get a gathering space on the dry side, which is, you know, but not the reason why the upper room was so beloved is it had an intimacy feel, right? It was somewhere between a wet and dry side, if you want to put it, it was right in the middle of the, you know, not in the walkway of the Esplanade at all. It was pulled back enough, elevated enough that you could sit there and host a birthday party, gather and play games, you know, do board games, whatever, sit and have a meal, have an outdoor thing with your family and not be in the walkways and not be in the street, not be so close to the street that you've got the cars on you, not be so close to, it was an ideal, unique location. And so now the point of putting the tide gate further east to the dead end of the street, which has nothing, it's a dead end street, right? It's a circle at the end of a street with a with the center part that has nothing on it. It's just all stone, right? It's just, you know, you've taken away the space that could be public realm space and left the dead space. And even in the design, the street is not redesigned, which maybe it could have been, maybe it could not have been, but it was not looked at any kind of redesign to be able to accommodate moving the tide gate back further east. And that's the key.
Thanks, Tammy, and it's an important point, and I think it speaks to a lot of issues that sometimes in terms of integrating reality of what's happening. The loss of a wonderful community space is really what's at the crux of the discussion here tonight, if I'm hearing everybody correctly, and that was a huge loss, not to mention the art. I know you all are coming back. First of all, a huge thank you, always edifying as ever, and very patient that you are. I know you're coming back to environmental protection to talk about drainage, and there I think we'll really want to have a real understanding of what's happening in Stuyvesant and
That's
Pump
like,
House.
yeah, we can keep
Big
an
one.
update sort of on where we are in that process. Russ is definitely gonna be the star show.
Great.
I'm not gonna try to pass plans.
But I just want to reiterate that it'll be important to talk about the pump house. That's not something that's underground, of course, above ground and what's happening there and really
Yeah, like
understanding
where we are in
Stuyvesant,
process, yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure, we're gonna work, Marty and I talked to you and have DP here too to talk through some of like the more technical things too, just so from you know, I
I
think it's
think
good
we're
to-
interested in the technical, I think, but the community and public are really interested to know the why, and that, for that, the technical is important, but they also want to know what it looks like, and so we haven't yet
Yeah.
really seen Stuyvesant in the pump house. But
Yeah, we're not very, like, it's on a very different track in terms of like, we just wrapped up like we just wrapped up our basis of design report, so we won't really have design until probably the spring, like at 30%, but we can talk about it, just sort of where we are.
I must have some schematic, because I've seen them before, so whatever it is.
But I think we keep like a benchmark of where we are in the process is important.
That is indeed. Okay, great. Well, I'm releasing myself from the role of co-chair here and taking Jeff Galloway taking over for the last two items on the agenda, which are Battery Park City, environmental protections. Welcome to stay. I unfortunately have to go, but anybody in environmental protection does not have to stay.
Welcome to stay, but dismissed otherwise.
Thanks so much.
Farewell. Don't let the door hit you. I get it.
I can hear all of ours doing.
Happy holiday. Me too. I'm gonna.
Reps haven't going to be done by the time you get back. It's gonna be quick.
I just thought that was today, but I had a.
Sorry? I think I need the restroom.
Oh, great. And when?
Then-
We're gonna teach you.
You know the code. It's too.
We're gonna keep doing that best friends always. Thank you.
5 minutes.
Happy holidays.
5 minutes. I bet Jill. It'll be 5 minutes.
Let's make it happen.
And just so, people know, it's actually only one agenda. item.
Yeah,
We gave Pat the night off, given the weather and, lateness, so.
That way to stay safe and clean.
See.
All
Shot.
right. Isn't that great?
Yeah. that's great.
All right, just do it. You wanna just blow that up, or is that?
Yeah, if I
go.
Okay, you can just scroll.
Who is that Santa?
It's this very special guest. So, thanks everyone. I will just start off, and again, I'll run through this. We just put some top items in here. We tried to we kind of make this as focused as we can. We spent a lot of time, obviously, on resiliency previously, so we just have some other non-resiliency items. Not I wanted to bring to the committee's attention. Obviously, thanks to all who joined us on December 4th for our annual tree lighting session, holiday lights. Special thanks to the PSI's 276 Advanced Chorus, BMCC's Downtown Chorus, and of course, Stocking Good Care and Valerie Mitchell for helping us spread good cheer during gifts and share personal items to folks in need. So that's just a picture there from our holiday lights. That was, I guess it was 2 Thursdays ago, the 4th. Thank you, Richard. We go to the next page. I just wanted to zoom out just a tiny bit there, actually, sorry. Just a couple of quick items coming up on the programming front. As you all know, you can recycle your tree. It's not even Christmas yet. We're already talking about recycling your tree, but as we know, as of the 26th, you can leave your tree by the curb, as many folks do each year. No tinsel lights or ornaments, please. And your tree will be chipped, turned into mulch for use back in Battery Park City's green spaces. We have the Stories film series on the 15th, and again, we'll talk about these again back in January on the other side of the new year, but just to give you a sneak peek of some of the highlights coming up. With Coco NYC on the 24th, that's linked there. And then we have, of course, the annual art exhibition opening, which is on Sunday the 1st. For those who don't know or may be unaware, that is art that is featured and made by folks who take part in Battery Park City's art programs all year long. That opening reception is on the Sunday, and then the art is on display for the better part of the month of February at 6 River Terrace. Next page. Okay, we have had some success with our BPC resiliency drop-in sessions. Those happen twice a week. They happen on Tuesdays in the afternoon at 6 River Terrace and Friday mornings, 10 a.m. at the 200 Rectors. We do one in the north, one in the south. The last series of the first sprint is happening this week, and then we'll pick them up again in the new year. We did get some feedback from the community board, among others, that perhaps there was want or some interest in an evening session. So you'll have seen ads for that in the broadsheet in other places. We're doing one of those this Wednesday night at Six River Terrace, from 5:30 to 7. We'll see what the uptake is. If you are interested, you can just email the project team, let us know you're coming. You don't have to RSVP, you can just show up, but we do want to make sure that we have a decent enough sense of who may be planning to attend, so we can have the appropriate resources there. And if you haven't already, you can scan the QR code to get added to our mailing list for our bi-weekly Northwest Embassy construction updates that Michael and the team put great care into compiling. Has your upcoming information about the project, what work will be happening when, what you can expect to see, and what recently has been worked on and completed. That will continue over the course of the project. So for the next number of years, we'll be pushing this out on a bi-weekly basis. One of the things I did want to bring to the community's attention tonight, a nice give back, I think, for the community is, as you know, we reported on this last month, we close a segment of lawns across the neighborhood each winter to allow for reseeding and regrowth and resodding and rest. Among those was the lawn at Wagner Park. We will be opening the Wagner Park lawn on what we're calling fair weather days throughout the winter from 8:30 to 8 a.m. to 3:30 roughly. So what does that mean?
Yeah, it was fair.
Yeah.
It is.
Battery Park.
Let's share weather in the winter. We are doing our best to try to, we want the default to be Wagner Park lawn is open on days that don't have conditions that are, and I've listed them out there. If it's really wet or soggy ground conditions, so it's like muddy or swampy or just really soaked, let's say due to a heavy rain or heavy snow that has melted, or more than a half inch of rain. Or frost on the ground that is kind of frost but not heavy snow. With a temperature that is at or below freezing, or if it's thawing snow, which creates wet or soggy conditions. So trying to thread the needle here, but basically, for instance, it snowed over the weekend. And it's still cold enough where the snow will essentially kind of set for a while. So for instance, you'll see Wagner Park open tomorrow and this week, because the snow is kind of there, but kind of packed. So you're not gonna risk damaging the snow if people are. But once that snow starts to melt, it gets a bit warmer and it gets soggy, we're gonna close the lawn. So the default we're hoping to have is that on most days in the winter, if it's not otherwise soaking wet or really warm where the snow is melting, the lawn is intended to be open. We may have to kind of kick the tires a bit on how best to get that notification out, whether it's notifications on, hey, Wagner Park is closed today because, but as a default, it's open. We welcome your thoughts about how maybe to get that word out, but we are trying to err on the side of, it's a brand new lawn. Even in the winter, we want to try and have it open for people to enjoy without going too far in the other direction where it's now damaged for the spring because people were running on it when it was muddy and soggy. The other lawns in Battery Park City, they're listed at the bottom, as you know, remain open to the public. So lawn, Teardrop Park North and South, and lawns adjacent to the Irish Harbor Memorial. So that's the news about Wagner Park. And then just a couple of quick notes here, pet-free lawns, we always talked about it, we talked about it earlier with dogs, of course, and I lost its own contact information. I did want to put a quick note out here about the upcoming holiday schedule, so nothing surprising, but the offices aren't closed very often, but on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, the offices are closed and staff is off, so the public restrooms in Teardrop Park, Wagner Park, and the rooftop elevators and the Irish Hunger Memorial are closed on Christmas and New Year's. On Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve respectively, they're open, but they're opening on a shorter schedule, 7:40 a.m. with a 3:45 p.m. close. All other days, the normal winter operating hours remain in place, which is roughly 7:40 to 6:30.
Nick, I think Jill had her hand up.
Yeah, sure. That's basically it. The end of it is just the employment reminder and the allied stats, which you just have the chart for without Pat. Go ahead, Jill.
Hi, Nick. Two things. One is I feel from talking to my neighbors that they're still not getting the information getting to the office during the day or maybe one evening isn't working. I really think, and I've said this before, that you guys need to table in the buildings in the evening after work when people are coming home. People have so many questions. They don't know what's going on. In the dog run, when I talk to new people, they're confused. Is there a reason why you don't table in the buildings?
There are 30 buildings in Battery Park City. We literally do not have the number of people to table in every building every night. But I do think it's a good suggestion generally, if we could map out over the course of a series of months, pick the buildings out and table that way, fine. But as a resource issue, we don't have 100 people, Jill. We have a handful of folks who are very dedicated and committed to making sure they get the word out in every way possible. So it's a good suggestion. Let us give it some thought.
Okay, but you do have X amount of people that are in that office every day. So you've got thousands of people in Gateway alone who are very confused, frightened, don't know if they should move out, don't understand what's happening. So I'm telling you now, the message is not getting out.
Okay.
I think that we can actually be helpful to you in this aspect, because Gateway in itself is one complex. But I think that, to do something, for example, all the buildings on Rector and One Shot, because they're all close together in one of the Rector buildings, I think, not losing the Albany Street and South End buildings there could be done. So we could help you group, because I think 30 places is too many to get to.
Yeah.
But, maybe if we could take a look and target the areas and help you, we would help you do outreach, because I know that many of the buildings have their own private spaces. So we could do a meeting in one of the Milford buildings, and maybe that could, you know what I mean? Just grouping it.
It occurs to me now, yes, drop-ins don't have to be drop-in at one of our spaces. It can be this week's drop-in hosted by Hudson Tower.
Correct.
Hosted by Gateway.
So, and I think.
So it's the same setup, but it's just you're moving the location and then.
Right, so, we'd be happy to help you with that, and I know that Justine can help you with the homeowners coalition as well, and Betty, I'm sure, and we can do a north and south.
So in Gateway, the tenants association does periodic tabling.
Yes.
Just themselves,
Yeah.
and it might be possible to coordinate with you guys and have, Michael there or somebody there while we're tabling.
He's a very helpful fellow, Mark Liebman, I think.
Yeah, Mark Liebman, yeah.
We had dropped off some stuff a few weeks ago when they were doing like a Saturday.
Yeah, that's pretty handed, and so.
Yeah, we wanna make sure that we can help you get it out, that's the goal.
Thank you for that. Yes.
And then the only other thing I'm gonna say is, oh Lord, please.
Oh boy.
The dogs. I am a dog lover, dog owner. I just need Allied to spend a little bit more time at West Thames, first thing in the morning.
Okay.
Because, people were sharing pictures left and right. Oh, look, people with their dogs playing in the lawn because it's
iced over.
It's iced over, but then the dogs are peeing on the lawn. Then the kids are trying to make snowmen on the lawn. So, at some point, it would be great to have the thought of finding some place that the dogs could be off leash. I hope that that gets better when Pier A is closer to open and you can give us maybe some space or access way in to the Battery. That's actually something I probably should have asked, but this is for the South Battery Park City project.
Yes.
It came up at the Battery Conservancy meeting that you guys are behind schedule on the South Battery Park City as far as Pier A is, and looking to find a way to have a north entrance into the park.
Yes.
And the ticket hawkers are all,
Yes.
But so-
West Thames Lawn at around, so you said 7:45, 7:30?
yeah.
It's right where people go to work. They're walking the dog one last time.
Yeah.
Okay. They were talking about a couple of weeks ago. It might have been out there for a day or so, but maybe a more concerted or persistent presence.
Yeah, they were great when they were there for the couple of days and
They
then
were.
they disappeared.
Okay, good.
And then they came back, so it's kind of
It's a whack-a-mole.
pretty much. And of course, the ticket hawkers are, because it's cold, really delighted that Wagner's there. So, they're kind of creeping in.
I know, I saw it last week and we called Pat.
Yeah.
puts them off and then.
Yeah.
Somebody goes, I'm gonna talk about a dog, my son's gonna take on back, then we go to pick the dog, and the dog goes back. Okay, but yes. I will get them to add it up West Thames.
So we're gonna say this for next month.
Yes, and those are just the numbers, generally. I was, this week, we had the cab last week. Washington Street cab meeting.
Yeah, the Washington Street CAP meeting, we actually had very little to. Their numbers are down for local. But I am not necessarily surprised because it is so bitter cold that we in general usually see less homeless all over Lower Manhattan. So the people who are on the street who they're contacting are majority above 14th Street. It's not great for getting the homeless served in Lower Manhattan. But it is still, they are serving the people. So I asked them actually after the meeting, I think to add color for people to understand. I mean, I think Battery Park City residents understand because you feel the weather if you've been here so long. To add the number of cold blue days that they have on the reporting, because that is a really good understanding of when it's too cold to be outside.
Right.
And that's a DHS statistic.
Right, it's like that, so bring it back to the beginning of the meeting when we were talking about background, you want that appropriate context set, right? Cold blue changes the calculation fundamentally because it's a different set of conditions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see any more questions for Nick. So with that, we will conclude the meeting. Thank you all coming on such a cold night.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
See you next month.
Okay.
Next year. Thank you.